You might think that you have your act together quite well. Let's just assume that you do as an autonomous individual. But then, you're home for Christmas and you go see your family members, and there's all sorts of unresolved issues around that within your family. And those are definitely affecting you in all sorts of ways, right? And then in the broader social community, you're going to be interacting with people who are possessed by one idea or another, and that's going to interfere with your movement forward. And so, in some sense, there is no redemption for you in an absolute sense in the presence of the pathology, unresolved pathology of the past and of other people. And so it sounds to me like Hubbard concretized that idea with the notion of these thetans. And so you said that he conceptualized them as sort of stuck to you. And so can you elaborate a little bit more on that? Like, how did he conceptualize these thetan-like beings, and what does it mean that they're intimately associated with you and that you have to also clear them? And how do you go about doing that?
So this gets, into some things that have been widely ridiculed, fairly so, in places like South Park and other places on the internet. So at the lower levels of Scientology, the non-confidential levels, everyone's considered a thetan. A thetan is the primary animator of the body. It is basically the prime mover, unmoved. I'm a thetan, you're a thetan. A thetan is something you are, not something you have. Okay. It's not until you get to the upper confidential levels of Scientology that L. Ron Hubbard introduces this concept of a body thetan and a thetan cluster. And his explanation for what this is and how it came about is that, and by the way, Scientology's conception of life in the galaxy is very much like Star Wars. Every planet or every star system has intelligent biological life, okay? So L. Ron Hubbard discussed this thing called the Galactic Federation, however many in this galaxy of however many planets that was composed of. There was this politician. Hubbard decided to give him a name. It's Xenu or Zimu. And he decided his system was too populated. So his plan to get rid of, a good portion of the population was to call everybody in for tax audits under false pretense. And then when they showed up, to freeze them in glycol and load them up on space planes and fly them to Earth and drop these people into volcanoes and blow them up with hydrogen bombs. Now, this incident was so severe. This was such an engram for them. And this happened about 76 million years ago. Of course, the volcanoes on Earth didn't exist 76 million years ago, but don't think about it too deeply. And this incident for these beings was so, you can't kill a thetan, but it came about as close to it as you could. That it's basically left these beings in this half-dead, unconscious, crazy state. And they're just blowing in the winds of Earth for the last 76 million years. And so then when, the human body evolved through natural selection, which Scientologists are not opposed to necessarily, Hubbard had his own spin on evolution, but it doesn't necessarily contradict with natural selection. That when human bodies arrived here on Earth, a fresh set of thetans that were not exposed to the volcano incident, a fresh set of thetans were rounded up and dropped off to this planet so that this planet could be a prison planet. And L. Ron Hubbard says that if you're on this planet, you were a troublemaker, you were a rebel, you were an artist, you were someone who couldn't be controlled. The system didn't like you, thought you were going to help overthrow the system one day. Maybe you're like the hippies, spiritual hippies. And so L. Ron Hubbard creates this explanation that this is a prison planet, that we are basically doomed to live lifetime after lifetime after lifetime, with our memories being wiped in the between lives implant station, and that the fact that we believe we live single lives. For the most part, most people on Earth are not spiritual or religious. We believe we came from mud. L. Ron Hubbard was very much... he hates psychiatry, psychiatrists, psychology, Darwin, anything opposed to spirituality, Hubbard, later on claimed to be absolutely against. And so, and even Hubbard would even say that the religious people on Earth who according to Hubbard, have been pre-programmed by our alien captor overlords, sort of spiritually programmed, to invent these stories, the world's major religions, to sort of keep us occupied and to keep us from realizing that Earth is a prison and to keep us from seeking a way to get out of the prison, and that even the religions of Earth serve the purpose of helping to keep the population of Earth trapped spiritually.
What's the explanation for the motivation to trap us spiritually and to put us on the prison planet? Like, so basically he's trying to conjure up an explanation for the fallen state of man, speaking, let's say, from a Judeo-Christian perspective. Yeah, and we have to address that because people do feel that the world is a vale of tears and that requires an explanation. So why, and you associated that to some degree with the fact that the thetan spirits who were trapped on Earth were there because they were rebels or because they were artists. So rebelling against what exactly?
We're currently in the midst of Lent, the 40 days leading up to Easter. Many Christians are choosing to give up alcohol, social media, and other distractions to focus more on prayer, fasting, and giving. Hallow's annual Pray 40 challenge is one of their most popular. Last year, over 1 million people joined, and this year, there are 1.62 million people praying as part of the challenge. This year's Pray 40 challenge focuses on surrender and includes meditations on the powerful book, He Leadeth Me, by Father Walter Ciszek. The series follows Ciszek, an American priest and missionary, through his imprisonment and subsequent enslavement in the Soviet Union during World War II and the Cold War. His story is one of ultimate surrender, and participants in the challenge are called to surrender their worries, anxieties, problems, and lives to God. Our very own Dr. Peterson's wife, Tammy, was recently featured in Pray 40, where she shares her story about being diagnosed with terminal cancer and how she personally surrendered to God. The Hallow app is truly transformative and will help you connect with your faith on a deeper level. So what are you waiting for? Join Hallow's Pray 40 challenge today. Download the Hallow app at hallow.com/Jordan and you'll receive an exclusive 3-month free trial and hear Tammy Peterson's story of personal surrender. That's hallow.com/Jordan.
So Hubbard doesn't spend a lot of time talking about this. But it would just essentially be that, just think of Earth as the gulag of the Galactic Federation. Anyone who's speaking out, anyone who might become popular enough to gather enough power in society to be a thought leader, an opinion leader, maybe one day lead a revolt, that anyone that Xenu or anyone like Xenu, I mean, his name could have been Bob for all that it matters, that this is just a dumping ground, a prison where people are going to forget that we were ever even sent here. No one will be coming to break us out. And it's really only L. Ron Hubbard and Dianetics and Scientology that for the first time ever has offered the solution to free everyone from this trap. Now, you mentioned Buddha. You might be interested to know that L. Ron Hubbard claimed to have been Buddha and claimed that as Buddha, the state that he thought he created, and you'll know better than I, is it Bodhi? Is it Bodhi? Do you know? I mean, I don't know.
Bodhi, yeah.
Okay. That he thought Bodhi was a permanent state. But afterwards, he learned it was only temporary. And he had to come back and create Dianetics and Scientology to create a permanent state that you would not...
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So it's so interesting, because Hubbard was a science fiction writer. And this is such an interesting meld of archetypal religious idea and science fiction presumption. And it is also the case, by the way, that science fiction is and fantasy associated with it is extremely popular among atheistic materialist people like engineers and the more technically minded. Like, they get a tremendous amount of their religious education and motivation through science fiction and fantasy. And you can see that manifest itself in the, absolute cult-like followings of shows like Star Trek and Star Wars. And Hubbard was certainly part of that dynamic complex. I mean, I don't remember how many science fiction books he wrote, but plenty. And so you can see this as a more religious manifestation of a much broader cultural proclivity to turn this kind of mythologizing into something approximating a belief set. And that's certainly the case with Star Trek and Star Wars. You even see it to some degree in the Marvel universe, right? With the notion that the galaxy is populated by these cosmic beings. It's a recreation of the divine hierarchy of the Greeks and the Romans. Essentially, it's a recreation of the same ideas.